Welcome back everybody. Today's video is going to take a bit of a different turn and we're talking about young money matters and why millennial money is so important. So I don't want to start this video in a pessimistic way, but I do want to hit you with some statistics about why young people need to be a bit more money savvy and why educating them is so important. First of all, 1 in 3 millennials will never own a home, with predictions that half will be renting in their 40s and even a third by the time they come to retirement. So they won't have that asset to fall back on should they need to fund care fees or anything like that. This means a lot of money is going to continue to be spent on rent. And if you're renting, generally that can be higher than mortgage payments, although you don't need that deposit that you need to secure a good mortgage. But it also means that every time you're making a monthly payment, you're not really gaining anything in terms of an asset. Whereas with a mortgage, you're claiming a little bit more of that house or that flat every time you're paying a mortgage payment if you're doing it on a repayment basis. For students in the UK, the average UK student owes around £50,000 of debt when they leave university. Now, student loans have been in the press a lot recently and they're a very complicated subject, so it really depends on when you went to university, how long you were there for, and what the fees and the loans were like when you were there. So it really is important to check what your loan is when you leave university. Now, there are obviously thresholds for paying that back, but it's important that you're aware of those. But many people may never pay back their loan in full. But in that case, it can get written off at certain life events. But it does mean it's hanging around your neck for your working life when you do start to hit those threshold earnings. This is especially important for the poorest students because they have had the most help to get them through university, but it also means they then leave with the biggest loans. And how are they expected to pay that back? They can graduate with debt of up to £57,000. 1 in 5 18 to 24-year-olds do not have a savings account or a cash ISA because they physically cannot afford to save. They're living on the breadline, they're working, but they can just about meet their outgoings and they can't afford to put any money away for their future or for an event when they may need it should it occur. This then means they have to rely on credit cards or other forms of payment, which then can spiral and they can get into more and more debt along the way. It's really important to try and stay out of debt and try and save if you can, even if it's just £5 or £10 a month. Now, I know that all might sound very pessimistic, but I'm going to end on a positive one. The younger generation are actually expected to receive the highest amount of inheritance ever recorded, over £1.3 trillion. They'll profit mostly from homes that their parents own when they pass away, from their baby boomer parents, but then they won't likely receive this until they're in retirement themselves at around the age of 60. That still is a long time you have to work and live for until you receive that inheritance, although it can well mean that your retirement is better off than you may expect it to be. But this brings up another important point. Do you ever talk about money within your family? Do you know what your parents' will says or your parents' financial situation? This can be tricky to talk about and a lot of people don't like to do it, but it can be really important to sit down and just understand your family's situation. It can mean that when family members do pass away, and obviously it's a very sad time, but if you know things that you perhaps wouldn't have known, it can make dealing with that a bit easier if dealing with finances is taken care of. Most of these problems relate back to education. Finance isn't really taught in schools, basic banking is taught in schools, but beyond that, as far as I'm aware, there's not really any formal education. So children aren't really learning how to save, how a mortgage works, how to avoid debt, and all those sorts of things can really set them up for later life. This doesn't obviously come down just to education from schools, but in terms of from parents as well, or from other family members. It's really important at a young age that you start to engage your children and just educate them about the value of money and the value of things so that they can understand how expensive or how cheap some things are, and maybe you can turn them into really savvy savers from a young age. Set them up with junior ISAs or premium bonds or savings accounts of their own, involve them in that decision and let them know how much money is in there, but if you've earmarked it for something, let them know that. There's obviously a lot of guidance on the internet if children want to look that up themselves. The Money Advice Service is a really great website that you can look at for information about any sort of finance really. But another key thing to do is to get your children involved with their financial advisor as young as you can and as early as you can. Whether that's taking them along to a meeting, if you have an advisor of your own, take them along to one of those meetings if you're happy to involve them in your financial affairs. But they can really start to talk to an advisor if they're talking about setting up an ISA of their own when they reach 16 or 18, or if they're looking at buying a home, buying a property, or if they want to go travelling and they want to start a savings plan for that. If they can create that relationship with an advisor early on, then that can create a long-standing relationship that the advisor can see them through their entire lives and can help them right through from a house purchase, say, all the way through to retirement planning. This doesn't necessarily have to be an advisor that you used or you pick. There are great websites out there that you can choose on your own the best advisor that you think is for you. And you don't have to go and see the one advisor. Go and see a few of them and get a feel for them, get a feel for the company and how they work. But it's really good to get that relationship started early on. So it's not all doom and gloom, guys, and I hope I haven't depressed you too much, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's really about getting your family involved in financial decision making. If there's anything I can help with, please let me know. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next video.